Well, as we get closer to the November election, a party or politicians from both parties are really raising concerns about attempts to undermine and manipulate the election. And that is actually a top topic for an information security conference known as Black Hat. So Dan Patterson's been covering that conference virtually for us and is going to tell us, what some of the major concerns are. Dan, so what are you hearing about the various ways that people in the tech industry now, those in the know, think that our election could be meddled with?
So, Anne-Marie, Black Hat is an annual cybersecurity gathering of industry professionals who are focused on all sorts of vulnerabilities, but election hacking has become one of the main stage events. We expect a keynote tomorrow from Matt Blaze, a real election expert. Later today, I'm speaking with Christopher Krebs of DHS about specific threats to the U.S. election. But what we're hearing about now is kind of this blend of old standby attacks as well as innovative new hacks. So when I say old standby attacks, I mean stuff like phishing and ransomware. And look, phishing has been around for a long time. It's where you might receive an email that appears to be from someplace like Google or Twitter asking for you to log in, and instead you get a fake login screen, and the attackers capture your username and password. They log in and they download your private information. The Hillary Clinton campaign was phished and attacked. And very recently, Twitter was phished in a very similar way. So phishing is old, but it's also very effective. The new stuff we're hearing about now, this is really interesting. We've heard about deepfakes in the past or synthetic media. You may have seen videos from Nancy Pelosi that were altered, and I'm sure you've heard about Facebook and Twitter and others applying this altered media tag to social media posts. So deepfakes are using artificial intelligence to create an entirely new replica of, say, my face or your face, saying things that are just totally not what we have said. AI is pretty capable, but we also see synthetic media. So this is a blend of pre-recorded audio or video that just slows up or speeds up or slows down your speech. So we're seeing audio synthetic media distributed that could purport to say things that I never said, you never said, and could mislead voters into thinking one thing. One example is, say you hear an audio recording or see a video that says election day is on Thursday instead of Tuesday. That could mislead people in a critical swing district into voting on the wrong day.
It's so fascinating. So then who do they think the culprits are, most likely to be culprits? Is this, are these threats coming from outside of the country, or are they homegrown?
Well, both, Anne-Marie. This is, once again, it's kind of a blend. So we see these kind of old adversaries like Russia's Cozy Bear. This is a hacking group that was allegedly involved in the 2016 attacks. And we see evidence, or at least indications, that other nation states like China and Iran are getting into the game, at least when it comes to large-scale election hacking. But one thing we must learn is that over time, technology becomes cheaper and easier to use, which means we're seeing all sorts of domestic disinformation campaigns targeting not just the general election, but targeting local and regional races.
In 2016, what we discovered was that, there were many attempts to influence the election, a lot of them through social media, and a lot of these platforms started to put, safeguards in place. I think Facebook, now sort of needs to know where the money's coming from to pay for certain ads. But when we talk about manipulating the election, is really more about manipulating us. Right? Fake news articles or fake ads, fake events being planned, that sort of thing. So how does what we saw in 2016 compare to the concerns about the upcoming election?
Scale. So when I say scale, I mean much larger than what we saw in 2016. So 2016, we saw these indications, or at least leading indicators of, say, disinformation on Facebook. We saw Cambridge Analytica swipe all sorts of user data on Facebook. And, that was a couple 100,000 people, yielding a few million accounts. And Cambridge Analytica then took those accounts and targeted advertisements at people's fears in the hopes of enervating them or getting them upset before an election. We see the same type of thing happening at large scale. And look, your phone is kind of like a Facebook account. It is full of very personal information. And when you download applications like, say, the Trump application, the campaign app, it asks for a lot of information about your phone. The Biden team have said we will delete information we gather from your phone, but there's no indication that the Trump campaign has any desire to delete the personal information they gather from your phone. So we're kind of seeing the same things that we saw in 2016, but at much larger scale.
So a lot of the conversations that we've been having has been about how the coronavirus pandemic has impacted so many aspects of our lives, whether it's healthcare or education or transportation. Could the virus and the pandemic have an impact on the election? I mean, we have been talking about, the president's been talking about mail-in ballots, but we're talking about a different type of impact, I guess.
Yeah, so think of it just like this. When you're in an office, you're often on a work VPN, or your office network is protected by your IT department. When you're working at home, you don't have those same protections. It's kind of the same when it comes to voting. Caitlin and Adam wrote a fantastic story about mail-in voting that I suggest everyone read. But we see this attempt to gaslight the results of the election, no matter what those results are. And let's remember that when we see foreign adversaries attack our election system, their goal is not so much to elect one person or the other person. It is to sow fear and uncertainty, and to denigrate the tools, the instruments of democracy. So it is a long game that many of our adversaries are playing. They don't care so much about winning one skirmish or another, but what they do want to do is cause us to be fractured, angry, and to doubt the results of the election. Let's keep that in mind as we approach Election Day. It's really important to remember democracy, voting works.
Yes, really good to underline that. This entire discussion has been about technology, but it's really about hacking us. So we have to remain vigilant. Dan, thank you so much.
Great to see you, Anne Marie.
Good to see you too.